There's an old proverb that you may have heard that a bird in the hand is better than two in the bush. It comes to mind when reflecting on our Lord's words in our gospel today. This is one of the more kind of open to interpretation parables that Jesus uses, because there are several different takeaways that one can have when approaching it. The servant whom the master commends for his prudence, for his shrewdness. He makes sure, for one thing, he makes sure that the master gets at least some return on his investments, which maybe he wouldn't have gotten anything. I had a friend back in high school who, after that, as a young adult, he racked up quite a bit of debt. But after a while, it just kind of stopped bothering him. Now, I remember asking him about his kind of carefree attitude toward his financial situation. He had a proverb of his own. He said, when you owe $10,000 to the bank, you got a problem. When you owe $100,000, the bank has a problem. Now, I want to strongly emphasize that Father Don does not recommend, racking up six figures in debt. Maybe if you're paying for medical school, there are reasonable situations where that might happen. But generally speaking, that's not necessarily a proverb to live by. Yet this is another one of those passages, this parable, which kind of evidences that our Lord, He desires of us to exercise some of that shrewdness. You might also think of that line elsewhere in the Gospels, be shrewd as serpents, but innocent as doves. And in the specific context of this passage, one of the takeaways is that a good outcome, good fruit, is desirable, even if it's not perfect, not the very best fruit. Jesus tells us, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. And indeed, we should strive toward that. But don't get too down on yourself if you're not there quite yet. Maybe right now, you can only give the Master that 50 measures of oil instead of the 100. God can work with that. Earl Phillip, the 4th Earl of Chesterton, I had to look this one up. Back in the 1700s, he said one of those quotes that we often hear, anything worth doing is worth doing well. Personally, I prefer the words of that other Chesterton, G.K., one of my favorite Catholic authors of the last century. He has a ton of very quotable lines, but one of them is, if a thing is worth doing badly. Sometimes it's edited, yet worth doing poorly. And that adage, it kind of strikes me as more true. Now, Chesterton, he does not mean that we should always just phone it in, give the minimal effort on when it comes to completing our various projects. He's not advocating for laziness. The point is that if a goal, a task, is really worthwhile, worth striving toward, then pursuing that will bear good fruit even if we only accomplish it imperfectly. And that's a very kind of practical guiding principle. Back when I was at art school, no kid just picks up a pen and is immediately able to capture perfectly the human form. As if you just start sketching and produce Da Vinci's The Vitruvian Man. Now, you create a lot of rather poorly drawn characters before your art becomes refined. But each one of those badly sketched figures is still kind of a step along the path. And even well before you really nail down your own unique style, you're going to start producing stuff that looks pretty good. Our spiritual lives can progress in much the same way. You sometimes hear people talk as if, I've accepted Jesus, and now I'm a living saint. I've literally had somebody tell me that. And, among Catholics, however, the more common attitude tends to veer in the opposite direction, opposite extreme. I've accepted Jesus, so why can't I lead a sinless life? I keep making these same mistakes. I'm such a pathetic, worthless sinner. First of all, Jesus tells us, I came not for the righteous, but for sinners, so you're in good company. But it also happens that even in our flawed efforts, when we're striving to do something good, we often bear some good fruit. It's the opposite of the kind of double down on a bad thing kind of mentality we sometimes see in our secular world. For instance, there's a mountain of church documents out there condemning communism, the pursuit of which has cost us millions upon millions of lives. But you'll still occasionally hear that defense. Well, the problem is that we've never had, real communism. In those past incarnations, it's only been accomplished imperfectly. We need to double down, to communize harder. Then we'll finally see those good fruits. We'll finally create a utopia. To that logic of Chesterton and of our Lord, it kind of stands in stark opposition. That if a thing is truly worth doing, it's worth doing even poorly. Even being a stumbling, bumbling follower of Christ is far, far better than not following him at all. If it seems like success, especially in our spiritual pursuits, is elusive, very elusive right now, do we ever allow ourselves to kind of stand before our Lord and simply say, "Here I am, Jesus. I feel right now like I'm the very least of your servants, but I'm still yours. I wish I could present you with that 100 measures of oil. Right now, I've only got 50. Yet what I have and what I am, I give it, Lord, to you."